بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome you all to our lesson number 3 in the book القواعد المثلى في صفات الله وأسمائه الحسنى for our Sheikh العلامة محمد ibn Salih ibn Uthaymin rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. And today inshallah ta'ala we'll start with the fourth principle pertaining Allah's names. And this specific principle requires extra attention actually. So try to listen attentively. The Sheikh said rahimahullah ta'ala, دلالة أسماء الله تعالى على ذاته وصفاته تكون بالمطابقة وبالتضمن وبالالتزام. So he said that the notion of Allah's names, or the donation of Allah's names to His essence and attributes, it can be by al-mutabaqa, meaning correspondence, or بالتضمن, by inclusion, and بالالتزام, by necessity. We need to understand these three terms in order for this principle to make sense for us. So what the Sheikh is getting to here in this principle is the term itself, the word itself, and what it implies to. The word itself, it implies entirely to what is, to the object which is called by that term and word completely, or by inclusion, meaning that there are things which are part of the meaning of the word itself, which are denoted from the term itself, or by necessity, meaning that this word, it implies something outside the nature of that object, by necessity. So linguistically, the definition of al-mutabaqa, they say دلالة اللفظ على المعنى الذي وضع له. So mutabaqa, meaning that the notion of the word in which it was agreed upon for that object, for that thing. For instance, when we say the car, السيارة, the car, the word the car, it denotes to the entire car itself. So it denotes to the car entirely in this case. When we go into the second word, which is at-tadammun, by inclusion, linguistically it is defined by the denotion of the word to part of the meaning. The denotion of the word to part of the meaning. So by inclusion, the word as-sayyara, the car, it includes the engine, for instance. It includes the wheels. It includes the doors. So by inclusion, this term as-sayyara, it denotes to the engine, the wheels, the doors, and so on. While the third term, bil-iltizam, by necessity, that the word denotes a meaning which is outside the nature of the term itself. For instance, as-sayyara, the car, by necessity, it denotes to the manufacturer. The manufacturer is not part of the term itself, the car, as-sayyara, and it's not part of the meaning of as-sayyara. While the word as-sayyara by correspondence, it denotes to the entire car. By inclusion, it denotes to part of the meaning of the word car, which is the engine, the door, and so on. While by necessity, it denotes to something outside the definition of a car, which is the manufacturer. So this principle actually, it is used broadly. It's not limited only to Allah's names and attributes, but it is used broadly in the Arabic language. We need it in tafsir, we need it in fiqh, and so on. So one example, like I've mentioned to you, is the car, for instance. Let us take another example, for instance, which is the book. The word book, al-kitab, the term itself entirely, it denotes to the entire definition of the book, including the cover, the pages, the ink, and so on. So when we say the book, it includes this entire things. The book cover includes the pages, includes the ink, includes everything within that book. But when we say, for instance, the page or the cover or the ink, here by inclusion, it denotes to that which is part of the definition, the ink or the page, and so on. While by necessity, it is denoting to the author of the book. So by necessity, by presupposition, it is denoting that there is a writer for this book, and so on. So in everything that we see around us, we have a term, a name for it, which denotes the entire entity of that object by correspondence, بالمطابقة, or by inclusion to denotes to part of the definition of that word, or by necessity or by presupposition, it denotes to something which is outside the term itself. So how do we apply this principle to Allah's name subhanahu wa ta'ala? The Shaykh gave an example of Allah's name Al-Khaliq, the creator. So the word the creator, bil-mutabaqa, by correspondence, it denotes to the essence and attribute entirely. So by al-mutabaqa, correspondence, it denotes to the essence and the attribute in this case. While bit-tadammun, by inclusion, it denotes to the attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is to create, al-khalq. And he said here, by necessity or by presupposition, it denotes to that the one who creates must be able and must be knowledgeable. So it denotes to, by necessity, to something outside the definition of that word or that term or that name. In this case, the attribute of knowledge and ability, it is understood from the word al-Khaliq, the creator, by necessity, bil-iltizam. So this is how, using this way of understanding the denotions of definitions and terms, we get extra definition or extra meanings in this case. These meanings are taken, of course, rationally or using the intellect. So this is why you would see in the Sharia itself, there is a great usage for this way of extrapolating the rulings and the Qawa'id, the principles from the verses of the Quran and the statements of the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the authentic ahadith. The Sheikh, to support this definition and understanding, when he used the name Al-Khaliq, the creator, he used the ayah at the end of Surah Al-Talaq, when Allah Azza wa Jal said, Allahu alladhi khalaqa sab'a samawati wa min al-ardi mithlahun. So here the word khalaqa, created. Allah, the one who created these 7 heavens, and from the earth what's similar to them, meaning the heavens. يَتَنَزَّلُ الْأَمْرُ بَيْنَهُنْ. Allah's commands is descending in between them. لِتَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. So that you would know that Allah is all able over everything. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَحَاطَ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عِلْمًا. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had encompassed everything with His knowledge. So from the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal in this ayah, خَلَقَ سَبْعَ سَمَاوَاتٍ, created 7 heavens, He then mentioned that so that you would know that Allah is all able and all knowing, the exalted He is. So by necessity we are led to the extra additional attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this name Al-Khaliq, or this attribute Al-Khalq, to create. That also, if He is Khaliq, who possesses the attribute Al-Khalq, to create, then He must be, by necessity, He must be knowledgeable of what He's going to create, and also He must be able of creating, the exalted He is. So this is how, through using this qaida principle, we know how to deal with every named thing around us. We take through the name itself the entire definition of that entity. By inclusion, we understand also things which are included in the meaning of that word and term, and also by necessity we are led to additional meanings which are not part directly to the word itself. And then the Sheikh mentioned that especially in the issue of al-iltizam, to affirm something by necessity. He said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement and His Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam's statement, if it implies by necessity to additional meaning, then it is haqq, it is true, and it is accepted, because Allah's statement is haqq, and whatever it implies indirectly is also haqq and true, in which we should take and accept. So when it comes to Allah's statement in the Quran and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's statement in the Sunnah, whatever the statement may lead to by necessity, we say it's haqq, because Allah's statement is haqq and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's statement is haqq. Hence, whatever is implied by necessity is also taken to be haqq in this case. And then the Sheikh mentioned how do we deal with the statements of the human beings. So in the first case he mentioned how do we deal with the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But what about the human beings when they say a statement which may imply a different meaning by necessity? How do we come and deal with what their statement may imply by necessity? Do we accept it as if it were also His accepted statement, or do we abstain from taking that as a statement of His, or how exactly do we go about dealing with what his statement may imply by necessity? Remember, when we went through the book Lum'at al-I'tiqad, and Ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned the statement of Imam Ahmad pertaining the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. He said, bila kayf wala ma'na, without the how to and without a meaning. this statement itself, as is, it implies something else, which is at-tafweed, to delegate all the how-to and the meaning of Allah's names and attributes. And we have taken in that book how ugly is the position of those who delegate the meaning of Allah's attributes. Delegation of Allah's attributes, claiming that there is no meaning for it or no understood meaning for it, it means that there is a big portion of the Quran in which Allah spoke to us in a way in which we cannot understand. So this is why to say without a meaning here by necessity implies a wrong definition or a wrong way in which we deal with Allah's attributes Azza wa Jal. But since this statement was said by Imam Ahmad, and we know how clear the position of Imam Ahmad in regards to the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, and how much trial he had to go through in order to defend the position of Ahlus Sunnah in this regard. So based on his position, based on his other writings, based on how he was dealing with the entire issue, we say whatever this statement by necessity imply, Imam Ahmad does not accept that implication, which is taken by necessity. Why is that? Because from his position, his other writings and his other statements, we come to understand that that was not the meaning intended by Imam Ahmad by this statement, but rather he said without meaning without a meaning which is not appropriate, like those who had gone astray when it comes to dealing with Allah's attributes Azza wa Jal. He said we do not take the meaning of those who had gone astray in dealing with Allah's attributes Azza wa Jal. So again, we may see a statement said by someone which may imply extra meaning by necessity or presupposes another extra meaning. We say here, if it was intended by them and they accept that extra implied meaning, then it becomes equal to what their statement is. It becomes part of their statement. So the Sheikh said when it comes to the position of human beings and what are the cases in regards to the issue of al-iltizam, presupposition. So it's three cases. Either the one says a statement which presupposes a different meaning and he says, yes, I accept whatever this statement presupposes. Here we say, okay, whatever that statement presupposes becomes also his statement because he had admitted or accepted that presupposition. Or that statement of his, the second case, that statement of his and whatever it presupposes, he declares clearly, no, I do not accept what that statement presupposes, and he rather explains clearly what's his position in this case. If this is the case, then we cannot ascribe to him that this presupposition is also a statement of his. The third case, if this person, for instance, says a statement which presupposes extra meaning and he does not show his position, in this case we should abstain from ascribing the presupposition of that statement to that person, and we'd rather stop there and cannot ascribe to him things which he did not show his position in. And let us give an example for each one of those cases. The first case, where he accepts the presupposition of his statement, he said, the Sheikh gave an example, if someone who negates the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal says to someone who affirms the attribute of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he says to him, if you affirm to Allah the attributes of action, such as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes down in the last third portion of the night to the worldly heavens, or that Allah is above the throne, istawa al arsh, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, or Allah laughs subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those are attributes of action that Allah does whenever He wills the exalted He is. So if the person who negates these attributes says to the one who affirms them, your statement, your affirmation of these attributes presupposes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does actions. So here, if the one who affirms said, yes, I accept this, that Allah does actions, and my position in this is supported by proofs from the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is فَعَّالٌ لِمَا يُرِيد. Allah does whatever He wills, the exalted He is. So here, the one affirming the attributes, when he was asked by the one negating the attributes that your position in affirming the attributes of action presupposes something, the one who is affirming the attribute said, yes, I accept and admit whatever presupposition my statement implies. And the Shaykh mentioned also the ayat, the end of Surah Al-Kahf and Luqman, قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ الْبَحْرُ مِدَادًا لِكَلِمَاتِ رَبِّي لَنَفِذَ الْبَحْرُ قَبْلَ أَن تَنْفَذَ كَلِمَاتُ رَبِّي. Say, if the entire ocean was ink to write down the statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sea would run out of water even if we supported by more seas, but Allah's statement will not run out. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks whenever He wills, the exalted He is subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is again to give you a proof from the Sunnah, from the Quran, that Allah Azza wa Jal speaks whenever He wills. So this is an attribute of action. So this is to support the position of the one who is affirming the attributes of action, although it implies that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does things whenever He wills, the exalted He is. The one negating does not like that Allah is attributed with action, that He does it whenever He wills. In their case, those who are negating, they deny that Allah may do any action. Remember that the proof that we have taken earlier, they used Dalil al-A'rab, the proof of attributes or qualities. The attributes of the proof of attributes and qualities, they say it's actions. So based on this proof, they came to a conclusion: if we affirm to Allah actions, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself would be caused and had a beginning. Therefore, they went to an opinion to negate all the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. While we Ahlus Sunnah, we say, your understanding is certainly wrong. We have so many verses from the Quran and the authentic Sunnah affirming that Allah does whatever He wills, the exalted He is, in a manner that befits His majesty. How can we deny the multitude of verses of the Quran and a hadith of the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while they are explicit in affirming these actions to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala? But our affirmation is not like what came to your mind. Our affirmation is restricted by applying the verse لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. Nothing is similar to Him. هل تعلم له سميا. Do you know anyone who is similar to Him? ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. And there is no one comparable to Him. Always when we deal with the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, those verses and the likes and their likes are always present in our minds whenever we understand the verses of the attributes. And he mentioned also the ayah of Surah Luqman, وَلَوْ أَنَّمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ مِنْ شَجَرٍ أو من شجرة أقلام والبحر يمده من بعده سبعة أبحر ما نفدت كلمات الله إن الله عزيز حكيم. He said, and if what's in the earth were all trees, and all those trees were pencils to write from the sea, using the sea as an ink. And the sea is also supported by others, by many other seas, 7 seas. The word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not run out, but the sea would run out. So this is to tell you how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks whenever He wills, the exalted He is, and this is an attribute of action that befits His majesty. So this is the first case where if someone takes a statement of yours and says to you that your statement presupposes something, do you accept this presupposition? Here you say, I accept whatever it presupposes. The second case, if someone denies what his statement presupposes, and the Sheikh rahimahullah ta'ala gave the example, if someone says to you, the one who negates the attributes, and says to you, you Sunni who affirm Allah's attributes in a manner that befits His majesty, if he says to you, your affirmation of these attributes presupposes that you are simulating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His creation. You get the point here. So if someone says to you, from among those who negate Allah's attributes, and we Ahlul Sunnah affirm the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal in a manner that befits His majesty, if someone comes and says to us, by you affirming the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal, you are simulating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to His creation. He says your position presupposes that you are simulating Allah to His creation. We say no. In this case, we do not accept this presupposition. We say no. Our affirmation of Allah's attributes does not in any way presupposes that He is similar to His creation in any way, form, shape, or manner. And the third case that he had mentioned here, he said, where if the person, whatever his statement presupposes, he does not accept the presupposition and he does not negate or refuse the presupposition. Is it fine from our side to say that his statement, his presupposition is also his statement, meaning that as if he accepts it? The Shaykh is saying no. لازم القول ليس بقول. Whatever the statement presupposes is not a statement. You cannot ascribe that statement or that presupposition to the sayer as if it were his position or his statement. We have a similar phrase used in Arabic. They say لازم المذهب ليس بمذهب. So this statement only applies if the person does not show his position toward the presupposition. If he does not, then we cannot claim that whatever his statement presupposes is his accepted or similar to his accepted statement, that he is adopting and accepting that presupposition. We cannot ascribe that to that person. Why don't we ascribe it to him? Because maybe he did not had even in his mind that there is a presupposition for his statement at all. So this is why we cannot accuse him of admitting the presupposition in this case. So this is the qaida, the principle here. Again, it is pertaining the notion of the words. He said بالمطابقة, by correspondence, it denotes to the essence and the attribute. By التضمن, inclusion, it denotes to the attribute alone or to the essence alone, but not both. Both, it's only بالمطابقة, by correspondence. Why? While by necessity or by presupposition, it implies two additional meaning, which is outside the definition of that term. Like in the case of, remember the book, the by presupposition, it denotes to the author of the book. Although when we say a book, the author is not part of the definition. Similarly, when we say bayt, house, for instance, so the term house, it denotes to the entire house with its rooms, kitchen, washrooms, garden maybe, and so on. While by inclusion, it denotes to a room or a kitchen or part of the meaning of that term. While by presupposition, it denotes to the engineer who designed and built that house, and so on. So this is the idea of this principle, is that we may be led to additional attributes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by presupposition. When we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Khaliq, again, Al-Khaliq, by presupposition, it gives you additional attributes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like He is the all-wise, the one who creates. He must have wisdom for creating. He must be able. He must be knowledgeable, and so on. So it conveys to you additional definitions or attributes and meanings which befit Allah Azza wa Jal and His attributes, the exalted He is. So this is how we deal with this qa'idah to understand and deal with the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, the exalted. Let us move to the next principle, which is the fifth principle. And he said, أسماء الله تعالى توقيفية لا مجال للعقل فيها. He said Allah's names are limited, meaning limited to whatever is mentioned in the Quran and the Sunnah. We cannot make up names of our minds. We are limited to the names mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. And he said, لا مجال للعقل فيها. There is no space or room for the intellect to step in and try to make names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah's names are limited to the Quran and the Sunnah. The intellect has no say in presenting names, new names to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Why is the intellect short of giving names to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that befit His Majesty? The Shaykh mentioned some of the arguments to show the lack for the intellect to ascribe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala names that are not mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. So one reason he said that the intellect cannot perceive whatever befits Allah Azza wa Jal. Our knowledge of how great Allah is and how much greatness He deserves is limited. Because of that, if we try to assign names to Him, we will certainly fall short in putting the title which befits His Majesty, the exalted He is. Because of this shortcoming and lack of perceiving how Allah is great and how much deserving of praise He is, we may run short in putting the name that befits His Majesty, the exalted He is. That's why, based on this, the aql cannot present names to Allah, the exalted He is. So that's why we must be limited to the nas, the text of the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. That's why Allah Azza wa Jal said, and the Shaykh mentioned this ayah of Al-Isra, لا تقف ما ليس لك به علم إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا. Do not follow in what you have no knowledge of. Fairly, the hearing and the sight and the heart, all of that shall be questioned before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why if you try to use those senses given to us in a manner which is beyond our knowledge, here Allah shall question us Yawm al-Qiyamah. Why did we step into an issue which we have no knowledge of? And again, to step into a matter pertaining Allah's names, the exalted, in which we have no knowledge of, we shall be asked if we put names that are not mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. And secondly, why the aql, the intellect, has no say in presenting names for Allah Azza wa Jal. He said because it is to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without knowledge. To say about Allah without knowledge. Because this is an issue of the unseen, and you're trying to put a name for Allah the Exalted which is beyond your knowledge. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had dispraised such behavior and such action. And the Shaykh mentioned the ayah of Al-A'raf, قُلْ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ رَبِّي الْفَوَاحِشَ مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَمَا بَطَنَ وَالْإِثْمَ وَالْبَغْيَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ وأن تشركوا بالله ما لم ينزل به سلطانا وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون. And this is the shahid here. He said, fairly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it forbidden, had made the obscenities, the immoralities, whatever is revealed or concealed, open or secret, and also the sin, and to transgress against the other without due right, and to associate partners with Allah the Exalted without an authority, and to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what you have no knowledge of. So this ayah mentions a list of forbidden issues. Among the forbidden issues is the last issue mentioned in the ayah, and to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what you have knowledge of. So to say about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which you have no knowledge of, it's actually a major sin, something major in which Allah had dispraised immensely in the Quran and His Prophet, peace be upon him, in the Sunnah. And the third reason why the aql have no say in this issue, to make names for Allah Azza wa Jal, the Exalted, he said, because to make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with what He did not name Himself with is a transgression. So to give someone a name which he does not hold, this is a form of transgression. How about if this was with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Exalted? The Shaykh gave an example in his explanation of the book. He said if someone's name was Sulaiman, and somebody said to him, I am going to call you Sulaym, so he changed his name, will this be pleasing to the person whom his father named Sulaiman? Certainly it won't be pleasing. So this is a human being called a different name than what his father called, is certainly upset from such behavior. And Allah Azza wa Jal to give him a name which he did not name himself with, the Exalted, again this is an act of incivility with Allah the Exalted subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why the Shaykh mentioned also a qaida in his explanation of this book. He said we would not be able to perceive whatever is all befitting to Allah the Exalted. And he said that our intellect, no matter how much it exhausts itself to try to perceive who Allah is, meaning the how-to of His attributes, the Exalted, he said, you must be certain that you shall fail to try to achieve that. No matter how much your mind and imagination try to perceive how Allah is the Exalted, you will certainly fail to do so. Why is that? He said, because we did not see Allah Azza wa Jal. Number one, we did not see Allah Azza wa Jal, therefore we cannot perceive how Allah is the Exalted He is. We did not see something similar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to compare it to Him, the Exalted He is. Thirdly, it was not conveyed to us in the Quran nor in the authentic Sunnah a precise, complete description of the how-to of Allah Azza wa Jal and His attributes. Therefore, no matter how much we exhaust our minds and thoughts to try to perceive how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks like, we will certainly fail to do so. That's why, based on that, we will not be able to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala new names based on our intellect that befit His Majesty, the exalted He is. So this is the fifth principle, which is in short, Allah's names are limited to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. The intellects have no say in talking or presenting names for Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is tawqifiyya. Remember the issue of tawqifiyya, we hear the term also this in ibadah. We say al-ibadat tawqifiyya. The acts of worship are limited to the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. We cannot fabricate a new act of worship hoping that it will bring us closer to Him, the exalted He is. Why is that? By doing such a behavior or such an act, we actually do commit a sin rather than doing something which will bring us closer to Him, the exalted. Introducing a new act of worship, Islamically speaking, is a sin. Why is that? Because based on this qa'idah, al-ibadat tawqifiyya, the acts of worship are limited to what's mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. To go and present new acts of worship without having a proof from the Quran and Sunnah, this is an act of transgression, which the Prophet, peace be upon him, and Allah Azza wa Jal before that in the Quran had warned against, introducing and changing the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal. While in the case of al-mu'amalat, the transactions, the monetary transactions, they say al-aslu fiha al-ibaha wal-hil, that the nature of any act of monetary transaction, it is permissible unless we present a proof from the Quran that it's not permissible. So it's the opposite of the ibadah. The ibadah, al-asl, the nature of the ibadah, it is limited to the Quran and the Sunnah. The nature of al-mu'amalat, we don't have to be limited to the Quran and the Sunnah. We can do any type of transactions, but if there is something in the Quran and the Sunnah stating it's haram to do it, then we abstain from such practice in monetary transactions and their like. So let us move to this sixth principle here. And he said, Asma'ullahi ta'ala غير محصورة بعدد معين. That Allah's names are not limited to a specific number. So the qaida is that meaning Allah's names are many. They are not limited to specific number. They are not just 99 names. They are way more than that. How many they are, Allah knows alone, the exalted He is, how many His names are. We have the Sheikh, and he presented the proof, the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud in Musnad Imam Ahmad, and Sheikh Al-Albani said it's sahih. The hadith goes, أسألك بكل اسم هو لك. I ask you by every name which is yours. سميت به نفسك. You have named yourself with. أو أنزلته في كتابك. Or you have brought it down in your book. أو علمته أحدا من خلقك. Or you taught it to any of your creation. أو استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك. Or you have kept it with you in the knowledge of the unseen. So the last statement, استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك, that you have kept it with you, that meaning that there are names which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not reveal them, did not mention them in the book, did not teach them to any of His servants, but He rather kept them with Him, the exalted He is. So this is why we say that Allah's names are not limited to any numbers. And the Shaykh mentions a hadith which states almost explicitly that Allah's names are 99. So how do we go about, reconciling between the hadith and the principle mentioned here, and the hadith mentioned also to support this principle? So the hadith is actually in Bukhari and Muslim, and the hadith goes that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, إن لله 99 اسما 100 إلا واحدة من أحصاها دخل الجنة. for Allah, there are 99 names, or there are 99 names, 100 short one. Whomever enumerates them, he shall enter paradise. He shall enter Al-Jannah. So the hadith mentions that there are 99 names. So how do we go about reconciling between this hadith and the hadith which says that استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك, that you have kept the knowledge of these names with you? So which implies explicitly that there are more than 99 names. The Sheikh said here this hadith, what exactly it implies, that Allah had set out of His many names 99 names. Whomever enumerates them, he shall enter paradise. And he gave an example, rahimahullah ta'ala, by saying, if someone says, I have 100 riyals to give in sadaqah, does that imply in any way that he only owns 100 riyals? Certainly not. He may own more than that, but he had set 100 riyals for this sadaqah in this case. So similarly is the understanding of this hadith, that Allah has 99 names had been set. Whomever enumerates them shall enter the paradise. So this is how we go in reconciling between the two ahadith. The hadith of استأثرت به في علم الغيب عندك, the hadith that Allah has 99 names, 100 إلا واحدة, 100 short one. The Sheikh mentioned that there are ahadith which list the 100 names of Allah, or the 99 names of Allah Azza wa Jal. These ahadith actually are da'ifa and sound. They are not sound ahadith. Hence there is no authentic hadith in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, states all those 99 names. But rather they are taken from the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. And the Shaykh rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, he mentioned, he went on and looked into the Quran and wrote down 81 names from the Quran. And he looked in the Sunnah and he wrote down 18 names taken from the Sunnah. So altogether, he collected 99 names. You can go back to the book and see these names in which he had affirmed, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh. Of course, there are other scholars, especially this issue. You would see many scholars had gone on and strived and did some ijtihad, tried to come up with those 99 names. So they may differ in some of the names, and some of them they may add a name which is a combination of two words or more. But rather the Sheikh went on and looked into the names which are made up from one word in this case. But let me give you a list of names which the Sheikh rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi mentioned are not part of the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, and he has listed those names in his explanation of this matter. He mentioned, for instance, Al-Badi' or Al-Ba'ith, Al-Baqi. Those are not names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have no proof in the Quran or the Sunnah. Also, more names which are not part of the Quran and the Sunnah. Al-Jalil, very famous used name. It has no proof from the Quran and the Sunnah. Al-Jalil, Al-Jami', Al-Khafid, Al-Rafi', Al-Rashid, Al-Sattar. This is used a lot. Abd al-Sattar. Al-Sattar is not a name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Has no proof from the Quran or the Sunnah. But we have Al-Sittir, which is similar in definition to this word here. Also Al-Sabur, Al-Dar, Al-Adl, Al-Mughni, Al-Fard, Al-Muhyi, Al-Mu'izz, Al-Mudhil, Al-Muhsi, Al-Mubdi, Al-Mu'id, Al-Mumit, Al-Majid, Al-Muntaqim, Al-Malik, Al-Muqsit, Al-Wajid, Al-Wali, Al-Hadi. So like the Sheikh said, those are not names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because they have no proof from the Quran nor the authentic Sunnah. So that's why we should avoid naming ourselves by saying Abdul Sabur or Abdul Nur or Abdul Mughni and so on, because those are not, or Abdul Jalil, those are not names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to say Abd, only it has to be to a name of Allah Azza wa Jal, the Exalted. And also the Sheikh mentioned, he presented a doubt about the name Al-Muhsin. That Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah mentioned the name Al-Muhsin, but he himself did not find the narrators of this hadith mentioned Al-Muhsin. We have Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Al-Abbad, حفظه الله ta'ala, had written a booklet affirming that Al-Muhsin is also amongst the names of Allah Azza wa Jal. Let us go to the last principle pertaining the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, which is the seventh principle. So the author said, Al-ilhadu fi asma'illahi ta'ala wa huwa al-maylu biha amma yajibu fiha. He said, the deviation in Allah's names by disinclining from what it deserves. So the ilhad, although the term it's used these days to mean atheism and so, but it is broader than that. It is broader than that. So al-ilhad, it's a form of deviation. Here it talks about the deviation in dealing with Allah's names, the Exalted, by introducing something different which are not relevant to his name, the Exalted. And the Sheikh will mention here cases where people had gone astray when it comes to dealing with his names, the Exalted he is. Allah said in the Quran, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And to Allah, the Exalted, belongs the all beautiful, the most beautiful names, so call him with it. وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يُلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَائِهِ سَيُجْزَوْنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And abandon those who went astray in his names. They shall put into recompensation for what they have knowledge of. سَيُجْزَوْنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. What they do, what they were doing, they shall be put into recompense for what they have been doing, meaning going astray with understanding and dealing with Allah's names, the Exalted, Azza wa Jal. So the first group or a case in which people had gone astray in dealing with Allah's names, the Exalted, he said to deny any of his names. This is like the Jahmiyyah. Remember the Jahmiyyah, the early group who had gone astray from the Islam pertaining Allah's names and attributes. This group, they denied Allah's names, and they say Allah's names were created by Allah Azza wa Jal, the Exalted. And this is why when they said, if we affirm to Allah names, then we have simulated Allah Azza wa Jal to the creation. That's why they say we negate all those names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and rather we make them created like the usual created things of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those, when they negated Allah's names, the Exalted, they had gone astray pertaining the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, and this is a form of deviation. This is a form of deviation to deny any or all names of Allah Azza wa Jal. So this is the position of Al-Jahmiyyah. The second group who had gone astray when it comes to dealing with Allah's names, the Exalted, those who made Allah's names imply similitude to his creation. So when they saw the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, and As-Sami', they say Allah hears like we hear. So they have simulated Allah Azza wa Jal with His creation, and this is an act of great deviance. And in fact, it is an act of disbelief to simulate Allah Azza wa Jal to His mortal, weak, unable creatures, while He is the ever-living subhanahu wa ta'ala, the all-able, the one who possesses all the attributes in a manner that befits His majesty, which had attained its utmost perfection and completeness and beauty. So to compare Him to the less competent, to the immortal being, here you are simulating Him to those who are with less qualities and attributes compared to His majesty, the exalted He is. So there are groups, early days groups, who went to opposition by claiming that Allah's attributes is like ours, and this is a great deviance. But these days we do not see them available. But this tuhma, this accusation is thrown against Ahlul Sunnah by those who denied and negated Allah's attributes. So if you look to the Asha'ira, to the Mu'tazila, to the Maturidiyya, they accuse Ahlul Sunnah of being mujassima, that they are making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as a body, corporeal. They say, you Ahlul Sunnah are corporealists, meaning you make body to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are simulating Him to His creation. You are mushabbiha. And of course, this is a false accusation, because we never claim, none whatsoever, Ahlul Sunnah, that Allah is similar to His creation. We affirm to Him, the exalted He is, what He had affirmed subhanahu wa ta'ala in His book for Himself, in a manner that befits His majesty. Again, while attending, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, nothing is similar to Him. We affirm to Him whatever the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had affirmed to Him, while attending, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. So, to accuse us, Ahlul Sunnah, of tashbih, this is a blatant false accusation. While we Ahlul Sunnah, when we accuse those who negate Allah's attributes by saying to them that you are worshipping Adam, a non-existing being, by negating all the attributes of Allah the Exalted. Here, our accusation of us against them has solid proofs, which their position explicitly presupposes. The third case the Sheikh mentioned here is to name Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with something in which He did not Himself named with. To give Him a name which He did not name Himself with in the Quran or in the authentic Sunnah, this is a form of deviation. It's actually a great deviation, like we have mentioned earlier in the previous, the fifth principle, that Allah's names are limited, and to go on and to give Allah Azza wa Jal names, new names, which are not present in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, this is a form of deviation. It's like the Shaykh mentioned here, the Christians called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the Father, Al-Ab, or the philosophers, they called Him Al-Illatul Fa'ila, the efficient cause, again by giving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala names which He did not name Himself with, nor did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam named Him with. So this is a form of deviation, to present names which He did not name Himself with. And the fourth case he mentioned, to derive from Allah's names for the false deities or the idols. So we do see some false deities, especially early days of Islam and prior to Islam. The Arabs, the pagans of Mecca, used to give names to their worship deities, like Al-Uzza, like Al-Lat, and so on. So they said these names, like some mentioned that Al-Uzza was derived from the name Al-Aziz, the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although this is a position of some scholars in this regard, although Al-Uzza, it's a female way of calling their deities, while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never in his names are presented in a such form, in a female form. Also Al-Lat, they say Al-Lat is taken from Al-Ilah, according to some scholars. And Al-Lat, it was given to a man who used to fix food for the pilgrims back before Islam, and he was too generous to them. When he died, they went on and they started worshipping him, and they gave him the name Al-Lat. Some said Al-Lat, it's not taken from the Ilah, but rather from Al-Lat, كان يلت السويق, that he used to mix the food that he makes, like milk with wheat and so on. So mixing it, it's called Lat. They say the name was derived from this verb, Al-Lat, but not from Al-Ilah in this case. But again, we do see sometimes people giving names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the false deities, and if it does happen, then this is a form of deviance to name the false deities the names of Allah Azza wa Jal, the exalted. Again, Allah said subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. To Allah belongs the all beautiful name, so call him with it. وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يُلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَائِهِ. And abandon those who go astray pertaining his names, the exalted he is. So again, such practice, some of it may go to an extent and be as an act of disbelief, like in the first position of the Jahmiyyah, who denied completely Allah's names. This is an act of disbelief. This is why Al-Jahmiyyah, based on their position in such issues, denying Allah's names and negating all of Allah's attributes, they say this is an act of disbelief. This is why the one who has established the way of Al-Jahmiyyah, Al-Ja'd ibn Dirham, it was said he was killed by the ruler of his region, Khalid ibn Abdullah al-Qasri, because of his position. He was giving a sermon before the people in Al-Eid, and he said, "O people, may Allah accept your sacrifice. I am going to sacrifice with Al-Ja'd ibn Dirham, for he is saying that Allah did not speak to Musa, nor did he take Ibrahim as a close friend, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to Musa, and this deviated man, Al-Ja'd, claimed that the speech to be ascribed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is does not befit Allah Azza wa Jal. So he denied Allah's speaking to Musa, and he denied that Allah may take Ibrahim Khalila, that he took Ibrahim as a close friend, and so on. So based on his deviated position, the ruler of his time, and based on the fatwa of the scholars, so that this man should be executed for the disbelief that he has uttered and the great deviance he had led people to. In fact, during his time, his position was not that much outspread, but his student Al-Jahm ibn Safwan took his ideas and thoughts and started to disseminate his madhab amongst the people. And in fact, their way was later on adopted by other groups who had came up after them or during their time. They did not take their entire position, but they were founded upon their way of thinking, their way of dealing with the nusus, the Quran and the authentic Sunnah, to present the aql and to give preference to the aql, the intellect, over the text. That's why any group which came after them, you would see like Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn al-Qayyim and other scholars would say that they are also, they go back to the same school of al-Jahmiyyah in the manner in which they deal with the scriptures of the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. So this is why to go astray in Allah's names and attributes, it may reach a level where it becomes an act of disbelief or less than that. So we see that the scholars came into agreement that the position of al-Jahmiyyah is disbelief in Allah Azza wa Jal, while they did not call the Mu'tazila or the Asha'ira or the Maturidiyya as disbelievers, but they certainly had gone astray in the issue of Allah's names and attributes, and of course other different issues pertaining al-Qadr, pertaining al-Iman, pertaining al-Jabr, and so on, al-Qadr. That's why they have gone astray in so many principles in which Ahlul Sunnah had differed with them explicitly. So this is the 7 principles pertaining Allah's names, the exalted. I think it's very simple to memorize them. If you just take the first sentence of every principle, understand the concept behind every principle, and inshallah ta'ala you'll be able to understand how to deal with Allah's names, the exalted He is. So let us stop here inshallah ta'ala. In coming class we'll go over the principles pertaining the attributes of Allah Azza wa Jal. If you have any questions, brothers and sisters, please feel free to ask. Okay, if not, inshallah ta'ala we'll stop here. Barakallahu feekum wa jazakumullahu khaira wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.